Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Hope you're all fit and well. Unlikely, I would guess, to see Steve Williamson here today because Ed Butler landed in Scotland last night. They're off to the Black Isle show today, assuming they're both awake and not hungover. So yes, everybody else. This does give you an opportunity. Obviously, it's the start of a new month for the Mystery Machine competition. It's also the first day that we're going to be playing our Excavator World Cup competition. I'll show it to you more fully later, but that's who we've got today. It is Shantway against JCB. We'll come to that in a few moments. I'm going to say a few good mornings. I'm going to say good morning to Chris Ford, who's just arrived, to Mark Whiting, who has also just arrived. Good morning to Gary Muirhead, to Andy Hare, so close to Friday, I can almost taste it. Jim Turner, first off the mark. Yes, with Steve Williamson missing, somebody else might get on the leaderboard of the new month of the Mystery Machine. So keep watching. What I will say today is I'm going to start with some good news and some bad news. Now, I realise it's traditional to ask you which you would like first, but I'm going to start with the bad news because, frankly, it's the one that hit me the hardest. I heard this morning that attachment manufacturer Northerntrack will be closing its doors after 34 years of dedicated service to the demolition and construction industry. There's no scandal here, no insolvency, no bankruptcy, no creditors left licking their wounds. But after more than 3 decades, Andy Hare, who is in the chat, has decided to call it a day, saying that it's difficult to be a small manufacturer in the current economic climate and in the face of competition from auction houses and cheap imports. The loss of Northerntrack is a loss for the entire demolition industry, but it runs much, much deeper than that. I know how hard Andy and his team worked to remain afloat during the COVID-19 pandemic. I also know of many demolition companies that were given an initial leg up by Andy and his team during their formative years. Most of all, though, in an industry with more than its fair share of spivs with false promises, Andy has always been straight, honest, and entirely transparent. Now, in all likelihood, Andy probably won't be straying too far. This is in his blood, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if he kept his hand in one way or another. But it's still sad news. The purple rain has come to an end. And one of the industry's good guys is taking a step backwards. I'm going to take a moment to wish Andy and the entire Northerntrack team all the very best for whatever lies in store. It is a sad loss. It's always a sad loss when you see a company calling it a day. The one thing I will reiterate though is this is on Andy's terms. He's not got winding up orders. He's not being threatened to be sued. He's not being chased by creditors. This is a controlled closure, and yeah, very, very sad news. Now, I did promise you some good news too. How about this? You know how we all look at Laurini equipment and say, "Oh, I wish those were more readily available here." Well, now they are. North Yorkshire-based Robust-Track has just been appointed as the exclusive UK agent for Laurini's range of demolition machines, track dumpers, pipe carriers, and crushing and screening equipment as well. Good news for the UK equipment sector. Absolutely terrific news for Robust-Track. With all that being said, though, when I get to visit Marco Laurini, I'm doing it in Italy, not North Yorkshire. Let me hop on over to the chat because I can see that's doing things. There is Alex Latham. Good morning to you, Alex. Good morning to Ken Hatcher. Jim Turner is guessing on the Mystery Machine. I'll come to that in just a moment, but I can tell you it's not one of those. Now, without further ado, having done the bad news and the good news, without further ado, I'm going to roll the intro. I'm not going to post the question of the day because there is not one, because we're doing something different now. And I'm going to get the show on the road. So here we go. I can't tell who this is because the connection between this show and LinkedIn is clearly playing silly buggers. But there you are. A LinkedIn user. May well be Mick Norton because he's up that way. Nothing wrong with North Yorkshire, Mark. Listen, I have no issue with North Yorkshire. But given the choice, North Yorkshire, Italy. I'm going Italy. I'm just saying. Ken Hatcher said, "Sorry, I didn't catch the bad news. The bad news is that after 34 years, Northerntrack, the attachment company based up in Leeds, are closing their doors. All part of a plan. There's no scandal, no bankruptcies, no creditors chasing Andy Hare down the street. But it is sad news. And there's Chris Ford saying, sad news to hear. Andy's calling it a day, wishing him all the best for the future. Yes, here, here. Now, Mystery Machine. We do need to get into the Mystery Machine. Do we do that now? Let me just check the list of things I have here. No, we're not doing that quite yet. Let me introduce the show, shall I? It is Thursday, the 1st of August. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition. In today's show, we're going to take a walk around Takeuchi's latest mini marvel. We're going big with Komatsu's mining trucks. We're staying big with a Hitachi excavator, and we're going underground with a specialized Caterpillar wheel loader. Plus, in our after-show news discussion segment, we're going to be celebrating a document change this industry for the better, mostly. But before we get to all that, we do have the small matter of today's Mystery Machine. So let me roll that bit of stuff. Yeah, as I said earlier, right at the top of the show, no sign of Steve Williamson today, which means he's either at the Black Isle show or he is fast asleep with an absolute stonking hangover because Ed Butler's in town. Either way, somebody's got an opportunity. Having said that, I've not seen Dan Cullen yet today either. So the people that came first and second on the Mystery Machine League table last month, not here. So this is an opportunity for somebody to take an early lead. And I've decided to start the new month with something a little more straightforward than usual. So here is what you have to work with. That's what you've got. You've got a bit of a beacon, and I would say that is a bit of cab. Anybody spot it from that? Be very impressed if you can. That is what you've got to work with today. We will come back to that, but I do need to remind you that today is the first day. We're not doing question of the day any longer, at least not for about a month and a bit. Today is going to be the first day of what we're calling the Excavator World Cup. And as Fred pointed out just yesterday, we should have probably called this the Excavator Olympics on the basis that the Olympics is going on as we speak. Wish I'd thought of that before, but we have a graphic for it. So let me throw this up on the screen and I'll tell you exactly what I need you to do in just a moment. Yes, today is the first day of our Excavator World Cup. Now, to remind you how this is going to work, we've already done the draw. We did this a week and a half ago. So we put 32 manufacturers, excavator manufacturers, into a hat, pulled them out. We drew who was playing who in the first round. And the first ones that came out were Shantway. I can show you this actually. Shantway and JCB. How are we going to decide which you'd prefer? Well, I'd like you to vote on it. So imagine I've given you an imaginary £100,000 in which to invest in an excavator from one of those two manufacturers. So armed with your imaginary £100,000, are you buying a Shantway from China or are you buying a JCB from just up the road in the UK? Quite simply, in the chat, I'd just like you to either type Shantway, Shantui, or JCB. You get the gist. I'll be revisiting this as we go along. Obviously, the winner of today's round will stay in for the next round, and the loser, they're sent home without anything. So please vote Shantway or JCB in the chat. The chat is getting busy already, I can tell you. So let's have a look. Let me have a look. Ken Hatcher is saying that our Mystery Machine is a dumper. It isn't. Gary Muirhead reckons it's a JCB 2CX Airmaster. It's not one of those. Dan Cullen has just arrived in time for the Mystery Machine. Ken Hatcher is voting for JCB. Dan Cullen is voting JCB. Mark Whiting is apparently voting for JCN. I can fill in the gaps. I know what you're doing, Mark. And Gary Muirhead, I think this could well be a whitewash. And Mark has come back with JCB. I don't know if that's a predictive text thing or chunky fingers, but either way, we've got the vote. No votes as yet for the fine folks at Shantway. The mystery machine is on the screen there, so let me show you a bit more. There you are. No correct guesses yet. Well, nobody's got the right type of machine, and nobody has got the right manufacturer either at this point. So keep those guesses coming in if you would be so kind. We do need to get the show on the road, so I'll be right back in just a moment after a smidgen of this. Yeah, Takeuchi have got a new mini excavator out, and they've given us a very, very in-depth and intense walk around it. This is like 6 minutes on a mini excavator. You should know I may not ask questions later, but I might. You will know everything you could possibly need to know about this new Takeuchi immediately after this.
Hey, I'm Lee Padgett with Takeuchi. Today we're going to be taking a look at the features and benefits of the TB395W wheeled excavator. With an operating weight of 23,424 pounds, a powerful 114 horsepower engine, and a max dig depth of 13 feet 5 inches, the TB395W is a highly versatile machine that combines powerful excavating performance and on-road capabilities, making it ideal for fast-paced applications. The TB395W is equipped with a 2-piece heavy-duty swing boom that enhances the machine's versatility and productivity on the job site. This feature allows the operator to easily dig offset to both the right and left sides of the machine. The 2-piece articulating boom extends the reach of the arm, enabling the operator to dig further away from the machine while also being able to dig closer to it when needed. The TB395W is equipped with 3 auxiliary circuits that cater to different hydraulic requirements. The primary circuit delivers an impressive 32 gallons per minute, ensuring ample power to use with hydraulic attachments. The secondary circuit provides 14.5 gallons per minute, offering flexibility for a wide range of applications. Additionally, the third auxiliary circuit is specifically designed for use with a hydraulic quick coupler, enhancing efficiency and productivity on the job site. Stability is greatly increased with the use of hydraulic outriggers and a dozer blade. These features provide additional support and balance, allowing for more precise and controlled movements during digging operations. The lockable digging brake and ram lock further contribute to improved stability by preventing unwanted movement and ensuring the machine stays in place while digging. The heavy-duty steel reinforced blade is designed with a box frame structure, ensuring rigidity and durability. The unique shape of this blade with its height and curvature enables better material retention and prevents material from rolling back towards the machine. 2 different steering options are available in the TB395W, making it a versatile and efficient machine for various job site needs. The 2-wheel steer option provides excellent maneuverability for tight spaces, while the 4-wheel steer with crab steer feature allows for seamless movement and positioning in confined areas. Large job sites can be easily navigated with the TB395W. With an impressive 12.6 inches of ground clearance and 100% locking differentials, this machine can handle rough and uneven surfaces with ease. Additionally, the 18-mile-per-hour road gear ensures that users can quickly move between work sites, increasing productivity and efficiency on the job. Auto cruise control is a valuable feature that allows operators to set and adjust travel speed, whether in low or high range, through the convenient rocker switch set button. This functionality is especially useful for tasks that require a consistent travel speed, ensuring precise and efficient operation of attachments. The 270-degree camera system provides operators with peace of mind with its unmatched field of view around the rear and sides of the machine. Potential hazards are easily detected and avoided. The LED lighting package, both front and rear, enhances visibility in low light conditions. Serviceability is a top priority in the design of our products, and we've made it even easier using the large lockable overhead service doors. These doors provide convenient access to essential components for maintenance and repairs, ensuring that technicians can quickly and efficiently address maintenance needs. Rear service access includes pilot filter, DPF and SCR, hydraulic pumps, oil fill and filter, dipstick, engine access, cooling package, and fan. Right side service access includes fuel filter, dual element air cleaner, hydraulic tank, battery access, control valve, fuel tank and fuel fill, def tank and def fill, washer fluid, and pattern change valve. Lockable storage bins are conveniently located on both the left and right sides of the machine for easy access. Additionally, wheel chocks are included to ensure that your machine stays in place while parked. At Takeuchi, we believe that a comfortable operator will be a productive operator. That's why we've designed the TB395W with an automotive-inspired interior that provides outstanding visibility. The spacious floorboard controls include swing boom and dual boom control pedal, lockable digging brake, foot throttle, and the two-way adjustable steering column. The TB395W is equipped with a 6-way adjustable high-back air-ride suspension seat, ensuring maximum comfort and support for the operator during long hours of use. With full pilot controls that are low effort and precise, users can easily maneuver the machine for digging and other fine movements. The 8-inch color touchscreen display with jog dial is a powerful tool that provides easy access to essential machine information and controls. This feature allows the operator to quickly view machine vitals, adjust AC and Bluetooth radio controls, and manage auxiliary hydraulic settings. Travel direction is set using the right-hand joystick. Available road gear and 2-speed travel can be selected using the rocker switch for high and low speeds, and road gear can be selected using the touchpad buttons. The blade control lever serves a dual purpose, controlling both the blade and outriggers with just the push of a button. This allows the operator to seamlessly toggle between the two features. All Takeuchi machines feature Takeuchi Fleet Management Telematics, or TFM. TFM remotely connects users to their Takeuchi machines. TFM provides alerts and machine information including location, performance, and maintenance data, giving insights into where and how the equipment is being used. The TB395W provides the perfect blend of performance, durability, serviceability, and operator comfort, ensuring delivery of top-notch performance on the job site. For more information on this machine or any other Takeuchi product, please visit our website at takeuchi-us.com or visit your local dealer for a demo today.
Yeah, I'm with Jim Turner, who says it looks a great little duck. Now, here's the thing. Here's how serendipity and coincidence works. Top of the show, we announced the fact that our friends at Northerntrack will be closing their doors after 34 years of dedicated service to the demolition industry. Northerntrack are based in Leeds. We then announced the fact that Laurini has handed the UK agency for all its major products, track carriers, pipe layers, demolition machines, to Robust-Track, who are based in Yorkshire. Mick Norton arrives. Apparently, today is Yorkshire Day. I did not know. I promise I did not know that. And yet the first couple of stories that we announced, Yorkshire related. Please forward any entries for flat cap throwing competition being held locally today. I wish I'd worn a flat cap now. I may still do. It's early doors. Right, okay, let's go back to the mystery machine, which currently looks like this. What have we got? What have we got? We've got Chris Ford going with a Thwaite 9-ton dumper. It is not one of those. Gary Muirhead reckons he spotted a Bomag in there, BW213D. It's not. Chris Ford also going for the Komatsu WA200M. It's not. Gary's convinced it's a Bomag of some description. I can tell you it's not, but he's gone for that one and that one and that one. It's not a Bomag, I'll tell you now. Do we have any others on that? We don't. So let me show you a bit more. Yeah, that I think proves that it's not a Bomag, although landfill compactors, I take that on board. But yeah, I'll tell you now before there's any more guesses, it most definitely is not a Bomag of any description. And Dan Cullen, it's not a cat scraper either, which you can probably tell from that now. We'll keep that one going. And don't forget, we are still taking votes on our World Cup of excavators. As it stands at the moment, Shantway is going home empty-handed. JCB are emerging victorious. But keep the votes coming in. If you would you've got an imaginary £100,000. Would you spend it with Shantway from China, or would you spend it keeping things British with JCB? Just type Shantway, Shantui, or JCB in the chat. Just going back to the mystery machine, I probably need to show you a bit more, actually, don't I? Chris Ford has just gone for the JCB 2CX Airmaster. It's not one of those, but Chris has also just voted there for JCB. Andy Hare has just said, I'm celebrating Yorkshire Day. Brought in my ferret to the office and have a nice brew of Yorkshire tea on the go. Salted. All the best, Yorkshire people. At this point, I feel like I should slip into a Yorkshire accent. I can't do one of those. So whatever you Yorkshire folk say to each other at times like these, just imagine me saying it, but without the Cockney accent. Yes, we will press on, shall we? Because lots and lots to go through. Dan Cullen's just offered us this on the mystery machine, the ball backhoe. It is not one of those either, although that is a good shout at some point in the future. So we're going mining in a moment, right after this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Yeah, the remainder of the show is going to be largely big kit, so I hope you don't mind that. And we're going to start with some mechanical monsters from Komatsu. As you know, I'm basically teaching myself mining equipment at the moment. So, yeah, pleased to see that. Right, we're going to go back to the mystery machine, which looks like that. I'm going to show you a bit more because nobody's got it yet. There is a wheel, I tell you. Gary Muirhead reckons it could be a Liebherr L504 compact. It is not one of those. And Dan Cullen reckons it could be I'm going for Shantway on that. S160. It is not one of those either. Keep the guesses coming in. Now, I have to be honest. I am nowhere near as good at this competition as you lot are. I cheat. That's the way I do it. However, I would get it from that. And I can't tell you why, but I would get it from that. So keep the guesses coming in. We will be... let's have a look. Jim Turner's just gone for an XCMG mini wheel loader. It is not one of those. Keep the guess. What have we got here? Gary Muirhead. It's just gone for the Volvo L35. It's not. But you're that close. That close. You are that close. Keep the guesses coming. And I'll return to that in just a moment. But first, we need a bit of this. What do we have in the chat? We have Gary. He's going for the Volvo L45H. I can tell you, Gary, you're close, but you've kind of gone in the wrong direction. Dan Cullen, man alive. You must be sending your messages the long way round. The Takeuchi thing finished ages ago, but he is saying Takeuchi hot kit. I agree. Just taking a long while for that to evolve or emerge, rather. No idea why that is. Yes, Gary, you're very close, but you're not quite there yet. I'm going to take that away. As you know, I'm off to Las Vegas next month. Just a month, well, it's about 7 weeks away, actually, off to Las Vegas for the Mine Expo show. So I am currently brushing up on my mining machine knowledge. So if you'll pardon me for just a moment, I'm going to take a look around one of the latest products for underground mining from the mighty Caterpillar. I wonder what the visibility is like from the cab of that. You notice the cab looks like it's already been pre-squished, like it's already gone through to lower bridge. It's been squished. But I do wonder, to my mind, I actually think you might get better visibility of things like the wheels, know exactly where your wheels are and your attachment. But I don't think you'd be able to see a great deal else. Anybody got any thoughts on that? Dan Cullen just said, "Oh my God, Mark, we're wearing some caps." Yes, we are. There's a reason for it, though. My standby hat, which is the one that I prefer, is sat here, but it's really hot on my head. So I've given it a break. I'm going to go back to the mystery machine. Chris Ford is going for the Cat 906M. It is not one of those. Gary Muirhead is within a hair's breadth with the Volvo L30. Literally a hair's breadth, but it's still not right. Keep the guesses coming. I'll show you just a touch more. Not that it's likely to help. And yes, Chris and myself are in agreement. We think you'd get a good view of the back of the bucket. Yeah, I think you would. And maybe because you're working in a mine, you're not going to have people strolling about the place. Maybe that's not really a concern. I don't know. Anybody's got any thoughts on that? I'd love to hear from you. Yeah, what else have we got? We've got, I think it's Hitachi time in just a second, so stick around.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
I can tell you that our final film of today, which is about Hitachi and one of their big excavators, big-ish excavators, is 1 minute and 54 seconds long. So let me just have a very quick look at the chat. You've gone the wrong way again, Gary, I'm afraid. He reckons the mystery machine could be a Volvo L35G. Could we possibly start the new month with a victory for yours truly? Let me show you a bit more. There you are. You've got 1 minute and 54 seconds to discern exactly what that is, or I will claim the victory, and I'll be glad to do so. But in the meantime, this. this is how the mystery machine works. So Gary Muirhead went with the Volvo L30, and I told him he was going in the wrong direction. Chris Ford immediately, sniping time, he said, Volvo L35G. It's not one of those because Gary came up with that as well. Dan Cullen came up with the Komatsu wheel loading shovel. It's not. But I can tell you we do have a winner. I almost had my hands on the prize. And then I was pipped. Dan Cullen also go for the L35G. Lots of people go for the L35G, but one person is going for the correct answer. And I can tell you that person, Gary Muirhead. There you are. It is exactly that. It is the Volvo L25. The Volvo L25. So let me just quickly write Gary's initials here, give him his 3 points. We know the prize went off to Steve Williamson day before yesterday, so he won in July. But first off the mark in August is Mr. Gary Muirhead. Let's have a look. Jim Turner says the phone holder is in a terrible place. I never used mine. Well, I do actually. It has drawings in. Talking about the Volvo, the Hitachi machine, I'm guessing there. Fair size yoke there. That Hitachi. My knee's gone today. Wouldn't he be able to climb the stairs? No, I think you're right. And Dan Cullen, who apparently is now living in a different time zone, we mentioned the fact that it's taking a long while for his messages to arrive. We mentioned that about 8-9 minutes ago, and he's just said, "No, that's my coverage." I think what I think he's actually typing stuff into the phone, pressing send, and nothing happens until he gets that tiny little fraction of broadband that he needs, which is also why he's still guessing the Volvo L35G. Lots of people saying that, none of those. Gary Muirhead, well, probably the one and only time I'll be at the top. I don't know if anybody else does this. I know I'm kind of in the minority when it comes to being a football fan. But every once in a while, usually 2 or 3 weeks into a new league season, West Ham will be at the top of the table. They've managed to win one, draw one, and lose one, but that puts them at the top of the table. I always take a photograph of it on the basis that West Ham are never, ever at the top of the table. Chris Ford is saying, stick with it, Gary. Yeah, absolutely. Well, you've got a head start on the reigning champion. So the reigning champion and the runner-up. So you're doing well. What I can tell you is we have a result. In the first round of our Excavator World Cup competition, we pitted Chinese excavator manufacturer Shantway against JCB from the UK, and we put it to the public vote. And I can tell you that the winner is, drum roll please, JCB. JCB goes forward to the second round while Shantway leaves empty-handed and returns to China. Tomorrow's draw is an all-American affair as Graddle takes on the mighty John Deere. So I'll need your votes for that one as well. I am going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into the chat, see what you're all saying today. Feels slightly weird that we're not going to be answering questions of the day, but about time we gave that a rest. About time we gave Gary's brain a rest as well. So there's a thing. He didn't have to come up with a question of the day, and he's won the mystery machine. Is there a connection? Were we overtaxing the Muirhead brain? I wonder. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second. If you can't stick around, do please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. Hope to see you again very soon. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I'll be back with the crack. In actual fact, you know what? I'm not even going to bother with the crack. I am going to skip that bit because we've already answered all the questions. We've already dealt with all of that. So I'm going to roll straight into this. This bit's a bit heavily scripted because I had to do quite a bit of digging and research on this, so you'll have to bear with me. And it's going to take me a good 5 or 6 minutes to get through it, but hopefully you'll find it worthwhile. If you've been watching this bit of the show over the past week, you'll know that we've tended to look at some of the very negative issues and aspects of the UK demolition and construction industry. Today is not going to be like that. In fact, rather than complaining and whining about something, I'm going to celebrate something. We're going to delve into the history and the transformative impact of the UK's Health and Safety at Work Act 1974, which was given royal assent 50 years ago yesterday. The legislation marked a pivotal point in the UK's approach to workplace safety, setting a robust framework that has significantly reduced workplace accidents and fatalities over the last 5 decades. Before the enactment of the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974, the UK's approach to workplace safety was fragmented and largely ineffective. Various industries were governed by different regulations, leading to inconsistencies and gaps in safety practices. The construction and demolition sectors, known for their hazardous environment, were especially vulnerable. The need for comprehensive legislation became glaringly apparent in the 1960s and early 1970s. Do excuse me. A period marked by numerous industrial accidents and increasing public concern. In response to those issues, the government commissioned the Robins Committee in 1970 to review workplace health and safety laws. The committee's report, published in 1972, concluded that existing laws were outdated and recommended a single, comprehensive framework. That led to the drafting of the Health and Safety at Work. Let me try that one more time. That led to the drafting of the Health and Safety at Work Act, which received royal assent on the 31st of July, 1974, 50 years ago yesterday. The Health and Safety at Work Act 1974 introduced several groundbreaking provisions. The Act established a general duty of care for employers to ensure, so far as it is reasonably practicable, the health, safety and welfare of their employees. The creation of the HSE provided a unified body responsible for regulating and enforcing workplace safety. Employees also gained responsibilities, including taking reasonable care of their own safety and that of others. Employers were required to conduct risk assessments and develop safety policies tailored to their specific operations. The Act's impact on the construction and demolition industry has been profound and multifaceted. I guess the most significant impact has been the dramatic reduction in workplace accidents and fatalities. Before the Act, construction sites were notoriously dangerous. According to HSE statistics, the fatal injury rate in construction has fallen by over 75% since the 1970s. The decline is a testament to the effectiveness of the Act and subsequent regulations. The Act led to the development of more rigorous safety standards and practices. For instance, regulations like the Construction Design and Management Regulations, or CDM, were introduced to ensure safety is considered throughout a project's life cycle, from planning and design to construction and maintenance. These regulations require the involvement of safety coordinators, safety plans, method statements, making safety an integral part of project management. The focus on health and safety has also driven technological advancements in the industry. Innovations like remote-controlled demolition equipment, drones for site inspections, and advanced personal protective equipment have all contributed further to a safer working environment. These technologies help minimize risks associated with manual labor and hazardous conditions. And perhaps one of the most significant impacts of the Health and Safety at Work Act has been the cultural shift within the industry. Health and safety is now seen as a fundamental value rather than a burdensome regulation. This cultural change is reflected in the attitudes of employers, employees, and contractors who prioritize safety in their daily operations. Regular safety briefings, toolbox talks, and a proactive approach to identifying and mitigating risks are now standard practice. Of course, despite the progress, challenges remain. The dynamic and complex nature of demolition and construction sites means that new risks constantly emerge. The industry has to continue to adapt and to innovate. But the health and safety executive and industry stakeholders are continually working to update regulations, improve training programs, and to promote a culture of safety. For all that, the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974 has had a transformative impact on the UK demolition and construction industry. By establishing a comprehensive framework for workplace safety, it has significantly reduced accidents and fatalities, improved safety standards, and fostered a culture of safety. As we look to the future, ongoing efforts to enhance health and safety practices will be crucial in ensuring the continued well-being of workers in these high-risk industries. Any such advances and innovations will build upon the foundations laid 50 years ago yesterday, with the royal assent given to the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974. Now, that's the scripted bit done. I realised that the Health and Safety at Work Act was the beginning of what would become our bloated and broken competence card scheme. I also realised it's the foundation stone upon which the Health and Safety Executive rests to this very day. I'll leave you to decide whether that's a good thing or not. What I can tell you is this. When I wrote the history of the National Federation of Demolition Contractors, they gave me access to a huge number of leather-bound volumes in which they used to handwrite the minutes of their various meetings. And when you went back to the late 40s, the 50s, the 60s, right up to the 70s, fatal accidents on demolition sites were almost, not quite, but almost a weekly occurrence. That, in fact, they were so commonplace, it was almost like any other business. Yes, somebody's died. I'm not saying for one moment they were nonchalant about it. They certainly weren't. The very fact that they were discussing it in meetings, I think, is a testament to how the NFDC used to work. But what I would say is, the HSE reckons that the introduction of the Health and Safety at Work Act has reduced fatal accidents in demolition and construction by 75%. Obviously, it would be lovely to have reduced it by 100%. One day, maybe. But I do think that is an absolutely landmark piece of legislation. And despite how it's been adjusted, modified, bastardized over the years, I do think, whoever came up, the report that led to the formation of that, don't you wish we had somebody as forward thinking as that now? Maybe that's what we need. Maybe we need a Health and Safety at Work Act 2024 that takes into account the more modern way of doing things, and hopefully takes us from that 75% reduction in fatal accidents to the full 100%. I'm going to go over to the chat because it's been a busy. Let's have a look. There you are, Gary Muirhead saying exactly the same thing. Isn't it about time we updated the 1974 HSE at Work Act? Yeah, I do wonder, and I realise that the Health and Safety at Work Act is basically a framework. It's not, it doesn't go down into individual things, which I think is, when you get bits that branch off it, like the CDM regs, I think that's where it makes sense. But I do wonder, given the more modern forms of working and taking into account the way that the industry works as a whole now, isn't it overdue? Should we not look at bringing that up to speed? I do wonder. I think, in some ways, I think it goes back to what we were saying yesterday about what we were talking about yesterday. CITB. I think undertaking the creation of a Health and Safety at Work Act 2024 or 2025 will be such a vast undertaking that I wonder if everyone's looking at it and going, no, I'd rather not. Let's have a look. Mick Norton, who knows these things. Lord Roban's report of 1974 saw the introduction of the Health and Safety at Work Act. The Aberfan disaster concentrated the need for change. For its time, a great concept. Yeah, absolutely. Incidentally, just as a small aside, and I know there's been a TV show about it, how has the Aberfan disaster never been turned into a movie? I just, I'm not entirely sure exactly the dates of the Aberfan disaster. I'll tell you what, I'm going to check very quickly. I should probably know this. In 1966, so I was a year old. So yeah, okay, a bit early for me to actually remember it physically. But it has become such a memorable thing, a bit like Lockerbie. I think we all, even if we weren't there, even if we couldn't find Lockerbie on the map, I think we all know what happened and where. And Aberfan is the same. Why has it never been turned into a movie? I do wonder. Construction and demolition accidents pale into insignificance compared to proportionately to agriculture. Yeah, the pair of them do vie for the top slot on the fatal accidents list, don't they? Not entirely sure it's a list I'd want to be at top of. Did you look at my point about that fine? I did, Dan. I looked at it very, very quickly. I have to be honest. Once I realised it was the 50th anniversary of the Health and Safety at Work Act, I got into full research mode yesterday. So I looked at it very quickly. But as I suggested, it is offshore. Not really my bag, I'm afraid. Dan is saying his coverage is about shut. I mentioned the fact that Gary Muirhead, no question of the day, and yet he won the mystery machine. It's not much of a brain to tax, he says. It's like putting a lid on an empty jar. I know the feeling. I know the feeling only too well. I do wonder, are we as a nation, as an industry, as a society, are we still willing and able to take on the big? And I realize this is I'm kind of pulling bits of information here. You think back to what the Victorians did with the creation of the London Underground, the starting of the Channel Tunnel, which they didn't get to finish but could have done quite easily, and stuff like that. They were very, very forward thinking, and yet we seem to be very sideways thinking. We're going to start HS2. We're going to link Manchester and Leeds and Birmingham and London, and all will be right with the world. Actually, that's turned out to be quite difficult and quite expensive. Shelf that. And I wonder about that from a legislative point of view. I mean, the very fact that the Health and Safety at Work Act was good enough to remain relevant for 50 years, I think, is a testament to everybody that was involved in creating it. But you see, if you think back to what the industry looked like in 1974, both demolition and construction, and then compare that to what it looks like today, they are chalk and cheese. They are chalk and cheese. And when you think about, 1974, in 1974, would anyone have realized, for example, would anyone writing that initial act, would they have realized that asbestos was a killer? I'm not sure they would. I think that discovery came later. And let's be absolutely honest. There's more there than just asbestos. There's PCBs and various other bits and pieces that the industry has to deal with. Also, if you were creating a document to safeguard safety for 1974, things like the tower blocks in the UK had just gone up or had just started to go up, and those that had gone up were 5, 6, at max, I would guess, 10 stories. Look at it now. It's a completely different scenario. Clark Waite 74 over on Instagram. Who discovered that it was deadly? I don't know. And I maybe that's something we need to look at. And somebody said to me, and I'm sure this is common parlance in the asbestos removal industry. Somebody mentioned to me some time ago that we had not yet reached peak asbestos. I asked what they meant, and basically the way that they explained it was asbestos was used in some buildings, and then it was used in more buildings, and then ultimately it was used in a lot of buildings. If you were building a tower block, the fire retardant nature was actually put in using asbestos. It was used in the Artex that was on your ceiling and everything else. Most of those buildings still stand. So every year we're putting a bigger and bigger dent into that asbestos legacy, but we have not yet got to the point. I can think of where I grew up in Battersea in South London. We were in a 5-story tower block. I was on the top floor of it. There was asbestos in that. That would have been built, off the top of my head, I reckon that was built early 60s. We were living there in the 60s and the 70s. You'd have to think, it's prime real estate. It's right opposite Battersea Power Station and all that's gone on there. You'd have to think somebody is eyeing that right now and thinking, take that down and we can put some fancy apartments in there. Now, I grew up in a 5-story tower block called Drury House. Directly opposite was another one called Beatty House, which is where my grandfather lived. And there were probably half a dozen. You'd have to think all of those. And that's typical, I think, across the entirety of London, but everywhere else. There are lots of these tower blocks that were built 60s, 70s. You'd have to think they must be coming to the end of their working life. Dan Collins out on his way out the door. Have a good See if we have matching caps. Bet we don't. I'm going to dredge out one that you won't have tomorrow. Have a great day, Dan says. ABBA fan, Mick Norton says. ABBA fan, there was a film poem, The Green Hollow, which I think was on the BBC. I do remember, as I say, a TV show, but you would have thought that somebody somewhere would have gone, I mean, it's almost Oscar worthy. I mean, off the top of my head, I can see sort of David Thewlis or somebody like that as, you know, the distraught school teacher, and I just think, not because I want to glamorize it, more a case of it was such a huge disaster, and maybe it should be remembered a bit more. ABBA fan created a lot of work that had to be done very quickly. The old fellow was in Wales tearing pit tips down, so the same thing didn't happen elsewhere. It's an interesting point. I'm going to go back to Clark Waite 74 over on Instagram in just a moment. It's an interesting point. After the Didcot disaster, 23rd of February 2016, they were preparing that project for blasting. There was no explosives in there. It fell down. It wasn't blown down. It fell down. But because it was being prepared, there was basically an edict went out from the Health and Safety Executive. If you are about to blast anything in the UK, stop. As it turns out, they told everyone to stop for a non-reason, for no reason whatsoever. However, the fact that something had happened, and I'm very critical of the Health and Safety Executive, but they reacted like that. Stop, because we don't want that to happen again. And I'm guessing here that ABBA fan was exactly the same thing. Chris Ford says, I can remember ABBA fan. Have the lessons been learned? Well, I think going back to what Jim Turner has just said, you know, the fact that all the big pit tips were taken down. I mean, when you look back at the photographs of ABBA fan, and I wouldn't recommend it because it doesn't make for pleasant viewing, but you see the size of those tips. Accident waiting to happen. What I do find interesting with that, though, if you remember rightly, we've been reporting over the months and years. There was a collapse of a wall at a scrapyard in Birmingham, probably about 6 months after Didcot, so somewhere around about 2016. And I think 5 migrant African workers were all crushed to death. In actual fact, you know, the circumstances, because it was a scrapyard rather than a coal tip, and it wasn't a school, it was some workers. But the absolute truth was, it was exactly the same thing. They'd built up this huge mound of scrap, propped up against a wall. And sooner or later, the wall was going to give. It gave. 5 people lost their lives. So in answer to Chris Ford's question there, have we learned our lesson? I think in the coal mining industry, I would like to think we have. Elsewhere, not so sure. Mick Norton says the control of asbestos regulations were introduced in 2002. So, I mean, I would imagine we probably stumbled across the fact that asbestos was killing people a wee bit before that. But going back to Instagram, Clark Waite, it is Clark Walt, I think it is, 74. I worked on a lot of jobs where I'm sure it was present and never knew. Yeah, I think a lot of people did exactly the same thing. And I'd like to go back and revisit the original asbestos regulations. I wonder how deep it goes, because I find this one of the saddest and most tragic elements of the proliferation of asbestos is, I'm going to use the term working man, forgive me, because it affected women as well. But you had a lot of guys, working men, going to work in demolition, in shipbuilding, shipbreaking, building, construction, and they were being exposed to asbestos, which could ultimately give them mesothelioma, various lung diseases, and kill them. They encountered that while they were out earning money for their family. And by some absolutely tragic twist of fate, a lot of them went home wearing clothing, overalls, coveralls that were also covered in asbestos, which was then passed on to their wives, girlfriends, spouses. So you go to work in a dangerous environment to provide for your family, and unknowingly you are taking a deadly disease home to that very same family. As I say, when you read about it, there was a lady on Instagram, a lady called Mavis Nye, who died just a couple of months ago, and she was a real advocate for asbestos understanding, asbestos knowledge, and asbestos awareness. And she lost her husband due to mesothelioma and asbestos related diseases, but she had also got it herself, and she fought for about 20 odd years. Fought for asbestos awareness and more action to be done, but she also fought the disease itself. She'd been diagnosed for decades, and as I say, she finally passed away a couple of months ago. Just an absolutely and exactly the same thing. She'd been washing her husband's overalls, completely unaware of the fact that they were basically covered in a toxin that claimed her husband's life and ultimately claimed her life. Going back to the original point here, though, 50 years of the Health and Safety at Work Act. The more I think about it, the more I wonder. If you think back to 1974, it would have been early days of PPE. Were hard hats the hard hats of today with their, brain protection and stuff? Were safety boots the same as they are today? Probably not. High vis, possibly. But we went from an industry that had been going to work in flat caps, like all the good Yorkshiremen are doing today, flat caps and donkey jackets, and we made the shift there. But you think about how the industry has changed. As I say, we're working at greater heights than ever before. And when I go back to writing that NFDC history, there is a term in demolition, which I'm sure a lot of you know. There is a term in demolition, which is top man. And it wasn't top man as in, oh, he's a top man, or he is the boss and therefore he's a top man. Top man was basically somebody that earned a little bit more because they were brave enough or stupid enough, or a combination of the two, to work at greater heights than anybody else. That's why they were called a top man. And as I say, they earned a little bit more. But by earning a little bit more, they were also putting themselves at much, much greater risk. And as I say, writing the NFDC history, all of that was there in black and white, because they recognized even back in the day, falls from height were a killer. And today, what is the biggest killer? 50 years after the introduction of the Health and Safety at Work Act, what is the biggest single killer in demolition and construction? Falls from height. So going back to the point that Chris Ford made there, have the lessons been learned? Partly from Aberfan. Have they been learned from other instances, like falls from height? With all the technology, with all the know-how, with all the brain power that we have at our disposal as an industry, you would have thought that somebody would have devised a way of building a building without putting men up high, wouldn't you? We can do pretty much anything else, can't we? You think about all the technology that we've applied and stuff like that. Surely there are methodologies, and construction is one thing. Demolition, I've made this point so many times, I'm actually sick of hearing myself say it. We have a method called top-down demolition, whereby we deliberately and knowingly put men on top of a building that we are munching down. If you said that to anybody in the public, we're going to put men on top of a building 25 stories in the air while it's being demolished, even somebody with no understanding of demolition, nobody with no understanding of health and safety regulations, they'd look at you and go, you think that's a good idea? It's hard to explain. Now, we featured on this show the top-down way system from Despe, which encapsulates the entire top of the building. And I've been up it twice, and you could not fall off it. You could not fall off the building if you tried. You'd have to work harder to fall off a building using that than falling off a cruise ship. I mean, it is encapsulated. Would it not be better to devise a method whereby we don't actually need people up there at all? And bearing in mind, remote controls, autonomous controls, and when you're taking down a tower block, you are doing the same thing 20, 25, 30 times. You knock it down to the next floor, and you do the same thing again. You knock it down, and you do the same thing again. Repetition. There we are. Mick Norton says, before Brexit, the EU Commission drove regulatory change for the better here in the UK. It's a contentious thing, but I agree 100%. And One of the things that always bothered me slightly about the way the EU Commission worked was they did drive regulatory change. What frustrated me sometimes, and bearing in mind I voted to remain, so you know where I'm coming from. But one of the things that frustrated me about the EU Commission was not the fact that they'd driven change, but the fact that it was left up to the individual nations to police it. I've been fortunate enough to travel to France, to Germany, to Spain, to Netherlands, to Belgium, to Italy, to right across Europe, all the bits of Europe. And there is a marked difference between how things are done here as to how they're done in Spain, as they're done in Italy. Sometimes we are streets ahead of our European neighbours. Sometimes our European neighbours are streets ahead of us. The point that I'm making here is we were answerable to the EU Commission prior to Brexit, and they were constantly coming up with new regulations. And I'll show you one here. There you are. The 1992 PPE and manual handling regulations were driven by the EU. Without that as a driver, who is steering our health and safety now? I'd like to think it's not actually the health and safety executive, because as we know from their glacial response to accidents, they're hugely underfunded, hugely understaffed, undermanned. Who is driving regulatory change and improvement now that we're not answerable to the EU? Gary Muirhead says, I'd like to think that the modern day materials and work practices don't make us look back in years' time and say that stuff was hazardous to our environment and health like our forefathers did. You'd like to think so, but again, I mean, we've had a thing not so long ago. I can't remember the technical term for it, but there were these panels. I always referred to them as blown foam. So you had, I think it was generally steel, this foam injection stuff, and then another sheet of steel. And it was used for insulation. You'd put it in the roof of a warehouse or something like that, which was all fine and dandy. And, there was no, as far as I know, there was no toxins released from that. The problem was when you decided to demolish that building, if you cut or damaged one of those, you were basically releasing gases, basically greenhouse gases. So you were actively destroying the ozone layer, which we're all fighting so hard to protect. And to make matters worse, the only way that you could deal with them was to take them down whole, which again requires people to be working at height, which is bad. You then had to take them, put them on the ground whole, undamaged, uncut, and then take them to a refrigeration recycling unit, which were the only people that could actually take the foam out of it and contain these greenhouse gases. In terms of asbestos, I think we all know where we stand. But have we learned our lesson? And we are as an industry, we're very, very quick now, I think, to jump on one of Terry Cornby's, Dr. Terry Cornby, one of his key contentions is the fact that we used to make stuff out of stone and glass and wood. And we all know what we could do. Come the end of that Victorian building's life, we can take the timber and put it over there. We can take the stone and put it over there. We can take the glass and put it over there. We can recycle 99.9% of that. There's no asbestos, there's no plastics, none of that. We can deal with all of that. The problem we've got now is not just the fact that we are now using synthetic materials, but we're actually using synthetic materials in conjunction with each other, and they are bonded together. So come 20, 30 years time, when Fred Blogg's Demolition comes to a modern built, built in this day and age, a tower block that he's going to take down, he is basically faced with materials that are unrecyclable, at least using today's technology. There's nothing you can do with them. So we've kind of gone full circle. We've worked so hard to reduce the amount of materials going into landfill, and yet we are now allowing the construction industry to build buildings out of materials that are completely unrecyclable. just a lack of joined up thinking, which I think, it is. We're an hour in. It does bring it all back to that Health and Safety at Work Act. It's easy, as I say, it's easy to point at it and say, oh yes, that was the starting point of the competence card scheme, and look what a bollocks that is. It's easy to point at it and say that was the starting point of the Health and Safety Executive. Look at what a mess that has become. But at its foundation, I do. I mean, I'm going to cut that bit of the show out and I'm going to put it up. And it is literally a piece of legislation. It is a document that quite literally rewrote the rules of this industry. I think whoever was involved in that, I don't know whether many of them will still be around with us, but fantastic, unbelievable achievement. Statute law gives the Secretary of State power to produce subordinate legislation, for example, KOSH. Who's pushing that, I wonder? Because, as I say, when did I say it started? I think the research started in late 60s, early 70s, and it was a good. There was probably 5 years worth of work went into creating the Health and Safety at Work Act. Is anybody thinking about doing that for 2029 to reflect the more modern look, feel, status of the industry? I do wonder. Like the fine for the guys on the oil rig. He's back on the oil rig again. Was that fine feasible due to operators' negligence, etc.? As I say, I don't know. It's so far outside my remit, comfort zone. I genuinely don't know. I genuinely don't know. But I do wonder. I do wonder about. We've mentioned this in the past. I think we have tended to follow the American lead in terms of where there's blame, there's a claim. And one of the key bits of the Health and Safety at Work Act, I know everybody always refers back. I'm going to go back through my notes here very quickly. Where are we? So, yes, it established a general duty of care for employers. We know that. But number 3 on the list of things that it did, employees also gained responsibilities, including taking reasonable care of their own safety and that of others. I might be talking out of turn here. Wouldn't be the first time. But I feel like that bit has been lost. I think that bit's been lost. I think rather than working in an industry that required, which was everybody take care of yourself and those working alongside you, I think we now work in an industry where it's not my fault, it's not my problem. And I do wonder if our approach to health and safety has basically fatigued people as to safety. If you are constantly reminded about the need for PPE, if you're constantly reminded about what you can and can't do, if you are constantly going through health and safety briefings, if you're constantly going on health and safety refresher courses, if you're constantly being told about toolbox talks and everything else, is there something in your psyche that just goes, it's not really my problem, somebody else has got that? I'm wearing a hard hat, I've got my boots on, I've got my safety glasses on, I'll be all right. I do feel like that could be a problem. I do wonder if we've lost sight. I often wonder this about toolbox talks, and I'm not advocating for this. It's just me pondering this in the wee small hours. When you look at how we've gone about warning people about the dangers of smoking, I've never smoked, literally never had a cigarette in my entire life, but I do remember when it first became law to have printed on the side of a packet of cigarettes the fact that they were potentially harmful, and those reminders got bigger, and then they became more graphic. Here's a TV advert showing you a guy dying, and here's his blackened lungs, and I think that became a thing because we'd become attuned. We'd become numbed to just a written warning. We needed something more stark, more hard hitting. And I wonder if we do enough of that, you know. And I don't want to be sitting in a toolbox talk where you're seeing the remains of somebody that's fallen off a building. I really don't, and I'm not advocating for that one bit. But just saying work at height or working at height is potentially dangerous. I wonder if that's enough. I do wonder if that's enough. Chris Ford says, funny how health and safety legislation is enforced by the government. Not that I'm against it. Then in times of trouble, they will expect you to die for the cause. I'm not against that either. It's a funny old world. Yeah, it is a funny old world. And it was, I don't even know if I ever actually said it out loud. That was one of the things that I found strangest about the whole COVID thing. I found it very odd that construction, well, I didn't find it odd. I didn't even find it surprising, but the way that the nation responded, oh, stay at home, you know, never mind Boris and his parties, stay at home. I mean, I remember going to my in-laws because it was my mother-in-law's birthday, and we were stood on their drive. She was in her front room, the window slightly ajar. We were 20 feet away, and we were shouting happy birthday through the window. You know, you couldn't travel, you couldn't meet friends, you couldn't meet family, and all of those things. And yet in the midst of that, somebody said, construction, you crack on as if nothing else is happening. And that seems strange to me in the first place. You know, does wearing a hard hat give you immunity to COVID? Turns out, no, it probably didn't. But more than that, you know, when you think, we mentioned this a couple of days ago on this very part of the show, we mentioned how heavily regulated and legislated demolition and construction is. You must not do this, you must not do that, you must not work at height, you must wear a harness, you must do all these things to make sure you don't die. There's a global pandemic. Yes, go back to work, crack on, never mind. Really? Really? Too many health and safety managers in positions of authority, courtesy of back of a fag, Paget, MVQ. Yeah. And there's a guy, what's his name? I think there's a guy called, bear with me. Yeah, there's a guy called Jason Anker, Anker, who I guess is a motivational speaker. I guess that's what he is these days. But he was involved in basically an industrial accident, big time, on a construction site. And I've heard him speak twice, I think. And first and foremost, lovely guy. Very, very erudite, very well spoken, knows his stuff. But he arrives to give his speeches. I think I saw him both times I've seen him. I saw him with the Institute of Demolition Engineers. And he arrives, because he has no choice, in a wheelchair, because the accident in which he was involved left him in a wheelchair. And I've been sat beside, you know, hard-nosed, dyed-in-the-wall demolition men who are literally sat there. You can see the bottom lip trembling and the tears in their eyes as this guy tells his story. To my mind, that carries way more weight than here's a slideshow of health and safety regulations, or here's a handout on why you should do this or shouldn't do that. There's only one Jason Anker. You can't send him to every demolition and construction site in the country. But again, I do think, you know, coming back to that point about being more hard hitting, I would dare anyone to listen to that guy speak and not be emotionally moved, but then go away thinking, yeah, we do need to think about this. It's like the ultimate eye opener. It's like, Jesus, you know, there but for the grace of God. You know, I've been up the side of buildings. I've been on the roof of buildings. I've been hitting the noggin with a low flying brick. I think I have more respect for health and safety now than at any point in my life. But I do wonder, you know, and again, you know, we always talk about this in health and in mental health terms, about the fact that we are an industry that is very, very focused on upon our own macho image. That's why we don't talk about our problems. That's why we don't open up to our mates at work and stuff like that. Same thing with health. I mean, how many times now, given the advent of the mobile phone and the mobile camera, how many times do you see on Facebook, Instagram, somebody has taken photographs or filmed somebody working on a roof or working up high, and you can see them strolling around, no harness on. They've got a harness, you can see it around their waist, but it's not hooked to anything because it's quite awkward, and I probably know better. I'll be fine. What's the worst that could happen? Well, the worst that could happen, mate, is you could die. That's the worst that could happen. And I do wonder if some of that gets lost in constant toolbox talks. I do wonder if we've kind of numbed ourselves as an industry to the realities of death and disablement and maiming. 45 people lost their lives in demolition and construction in 2022-23. 45. Not good. Not good at all. And kind of brings us full circle when you think that still represents a 75% reduction in pre-Health and Safety at Work Act. I think that highlights just how bad things were. What is that? So 45. So we were dealing with 45 back in the day. It would have been more like 180 in a year. There you are. Dan Cullen says exactly the same thing. It's a big issue nowadays. Not just happened. Not my problem. No one takes responsibility anymore. Hence the American thing. Yeah. I do wonder about that. And I don't think this is peculiar to construction and demolition either. I mentioned the other day. I live on a street with a bunch of trees. The tree roots have grown through the pavement, so there's a lot of trip hazards between here and my local shops or whatever. If I tripped over that, bearing in mind I've lived here for about 3 years, if I tripped over one of those and grazed my knees or hurt my elbow or something like that, the only person I'd be angry at would be me, because I'm aware of it. I know what it's like out there. I'm careful where I walk. I'm careful where I tread. But there's a lot of people in this day and age that would attempt to get some sort of compensation from the local authority because they'd been put in danger. I wonder, Dan, I agree with you. I wonder if we have lost the ability or the will to take personal responsibility for things. And I'll go back to point 3 on the list of things that the Health and Safety at Work Act did. It gave employees greater responsibility, including taking reasonable care of their own safety and that of others. Maybe we need to remind a few people of that. People, that's an hour and 20 minutes of your life that you're not going to get back. I can sense a cup of coffee coming on, so I'm going to let you get back to your day jobs. Thank you very much indeed for your company. Congratulations to Gary Muirhead, who currently tops the Mystery Machine League table. Congratulations to JCB, who are through to the next round of the Mystery Machine League table. Alex Latham, talking about hard-hitting reports, you interviewed my dad, Paul Latham, where he spoke about his brain tumour that probably caused by dust asbestos. I tell that story in my courses. I did do that, and I would happily do so again. I wondered, Alex, you've just given me a pause for thought there. I wonder if there is some scope for that. I'm very keen, always keen to showcase the good of the industry. I was speaking to one of the guys at Caterpillar yesterday about possibly doing another evening show with them at some point. We've done 3. They want to do a 4th. Fantastic news. I'm also talking to Komatsu about doing one with them. So all of that's going the right way. It'll be after the summer, but I'll keep you posted. But I do wonder if there is some scope to actually speak to some of the people that have been impacted by this industry in a negative way. Obviously, we've had Anne Mackay on as a widow who lost her husband in a demolition accident. Maybe we should have a few more people like Paul Latham and people like that. People that have been left less in some way. Been rendered disabled. Had their mental health affected. Been widowed. I do wonder. COVID Dilemma was a show of how much control they have over us and how we are tracked. Said that before. I don't care about the being tracked. Not a problem with that at all. But I do wonder, and bearing in mind, and I still harbour a degree of anger over this. While all of this was going on, and I understand the need to keep the wheels of industry turning and the demands of the economy. But when it was decreed that the construction industry and the demolition industry will be granted key worker status, it was done in conjunction with the Construction Leadership Council. The Construction Leadership Council is basically our conduit between industry and government. And there's a word within the Construction Leadership Council, and that word is leadership. Leadership is both a noun, in other words, you are being a leader, but it's also a verb. It's a doing word. Show some leadership. You are the Construction Leadership Council. Should you not have been going to the government and saying, hang on a minute, if it's that dangerous out there, why is it that this industry, 3 million odd people, are being exposed day in, day out? Is that just to keep the coffers filled? And when you look at all that's happened since, the money that's been pissed up the wall on HS2 and the parties that were taking place, was that fair? Regardless of your feelings on the validity of the whole COVID argument, I personally, I don't believe it was a conspiracy theory. It was a disease. I know people that died from it. I'm not going to dwell on that at all. But should the Construction Leadership Council really have been encouraging demolition construction workers to go to work when it was evident to everybody that it was causing death? Personally, I don't think so. Mick Norton says the Act actually says employees' duty of care to themselves and others and those affected by their acts and omissions. Yeah. I wonder if that's spoken about enough. This whole industry has got to the back of the fag packet advertising. Now it's ridiculous. It has come to this. Yeah, it has. It is ridiculous. And as I say, when you think about, and I'm going to go back to the Victorians again. Love me a Victorian. When you think about when the Victorians built the London Underground, as a capital city, we didn't need it, but they had the foresight to say, we don't need it, but we will. There is no question that the streets of London are getting it more and more busy, more and more congested. Therefore, we are going to commit and we are going to undertake something very, very difficult. We're going to do a really, really hard thing to make sure that future generations are okay. Today, we look at things and, oh no, that looks quite hard. That looks quite expensive. It's too ambitious. What does that even mean? Too ambitious. Somebody's too rich. How can you be too rich? Too dedicated. How can you be too passionate? How can you be too ambitious as a nation? Surely that is your very job. Your job is not explaining economic policy and negotiating with the French and the Germans. Your job is to drive this nation. Look at the industry. Look at the UK as a business. No business survives by retaining the status quo or just covering up previous problems. The way that a company goes forward is by continually innovating. Why is Apple the richest company in history? Constant innovation. Why is Amazon one of the biggest? Constant innovation. Microsoft, constant innovation. The UK? When was the last time the UK had innovated anything of any note? Tim Berners-Lee with the foundations of the internet? What's that, 40 years ago? What have we done since? On that note, On that note, I'm going to love you and leave you. I will be back tomorrow for our Friday show. More Mystery Machines. We will be pitting Graddle against John Deere in our All-American World Cup draw. So, yes, I hope to see you tomorrow. Until then, everybody, have a lovely day. Nothing more to say. Thanks for all your input. See you tomorrow. All the best.